Okay guys, I got something. I got something very, very special. Another Rolex.
Just kill no discretion, your mind is a weapon. 11-11, it's time for progression. Could try to play, but you're never gonna beat me. Look the other way, what I'm doing ain't easy. Bloody.
Okay, so I did an SOTC video at the end of last year, start of this year, and I've got a very, very heavy Rolex collection. And so there aren't many things that this could be. You know, and not many people in that video were saying I should get more Rolex. You know, a few people said, at least you got an Omega in there. I'm like, that's a pretty weird thing to say. I don't think anyone should have an Omega in their collection, but but there was one watch. There was one watch that a few people commented multiple times on. And so, well, I'm not going to leave it out of the thumbnail. So it's one of these. Pepsi. That's the outer shell, typical unboxing. Comes in the small box. So this isn't one of the new boxes. It still has this wave pattern on top. I like this box. Who knows when I'll see the new. No, of course I don't bloody keep watches in here. In fact, for sure, the Pepsi never even sat in this box for a moment. It did hold some spare links in the card for a brief amount of time. But here we are. We have the Pepsi. Come on, we can get in there. Pepsi. Oh, wow. The color's looking really good in this shot, huh? So yeah, a lot of you actually commented that I needed a Pepsi. And even I sort of kind of disagreed with many of you. I'd sort of made my bed with the Batgirl. And you can see that this is now a Batman or a Mr. Batgirl, a masculinized Batgirl, because this has the Oyster bracelet now. And that's because this Pepsi came on the Oyster bracelet. So I've done the swap just because this is the more, how would you say, hype traditional combo, you know, Batman on Oyster, Pepsi on the Jubilee. I think both of them, and now the market actually says that too, that both of them are nicer on the Jubilee. But just because there's, subjective nicer doesn't mean you could not like it for one thing or another. And I think actually Oyster is a little bit more versatile, especially if you're going to use the watch for travel. So would be my preference. So I'm planning on doing some trips. I plan on using a GMT Master 2 for the first time, and I plan on doing it on the Oyster just because it's not as eye-catching, not as blingy. So let me just get these gloves on. I don't want to put like fingerprints on it while I'm videotaping. It's not because I'm protecting the watch. It's just I'm putting the effort to make a video, so I don't want a dirty watch on the video. So yes, here we are. We have the Pepsi. How did I get this? Well, I wasn't expecting this. I got the Batgirl back in 2021, and for the most part, you only get a shot at one piece per family of watches. You know, you're not going to get 2 Steel Daytonas, multiple GMT Master 2s, multiple Submariners from the same AD. It happens for a number of reasons. It's a little harder for them to explain why they give a certain customer, like what you gave them the second of the same watch. There's maybe wife approval factor. Like, so why do you have the same watch multiple times? But anyway, a collector doesn't really need to explain why they have multiple of the same watch. I think this is certainly more varied than going for, say, 2 Submariners, 1 Submariner date, and then getting the green Submariner. That's about as far of a difference you can get on the steel Submariners. On the GMT Master 2, you at least also have the change of bracelet, which everyone keeps in mind. The bracelet alone is worth, I think, $2,500. In my head, I always thought, I'd love to get the Oyster for this, but you know, if I'm going to pay $2,500, it may as well be towards a companion GMT Master. How long did it take me to get this? I'm not going to say. Honestly, it's going to piss off too many people. Hit me up on Discord. There's a link down below. We can chat. But look, It doesn't happen for everyone. Certainly the wait list for this is in the years, and in recent years, there's been talk about just there being less of these hanging around at the ADs just in general. And so they are a very, very special, very, very difficult piece. But it's also a piece I've heard of interesting stories in terms of acquisition. Mine is kind of one of them. I never thought I would get one. So to some extent, I never really pressed my AD for it. But this being said, this is not a first purchase. I have heard of first purchase Pepsis before, exceedingly rare. I haven't heard of such a story in the last couple of years. So it feels like they've gotten even harder. And, you know, don't waste your time on trying to do a first purchase GMT Master. It's really not, that's so much effort. Like I can't imagine like going for that in today's market. Like, I mean, even when it was hard, when the OG hype watch was, you know, the Batgirl, people were talking like 3-6 month wait time, and they were kind of wait times and not so much, you know, what it is today, quote unquote. This being said, I've known this AD for quite a while now. You know, first purchase was back in 2020, so we're talking almost 5 years now, and considerable spend history, including multiple brands, more than a couple $100,000, as well as events and, you know, just getting along. You know, I really enjoy my AD. So let's take a closer look. Now, in the past, I've said my favorite is the Batgirl because of the colors. And for sure, in this shot here, you can see the difference between the two in terms of color. The blue between the Pepsi and the blue of the Batgirl, or Batman in this case, or Mr. Batgirl, you know, masculinized Batgirl, that the blue is very, very, very different. And I'm also red-green colorblind. So when I see this bezel and it's got these mixes of red in both colors, honestly, this is sort of like a little purpley and this is a maroony, I find it hard to tell the difference. It looks quite dark to me. Even in some light, like this bottom part looks brown to me. So in terms of colors, I think the Batman is the most vibrant. You do have the choice of the Sprite as well for a little half ring of green, but if you're doing that, I would advocate just getting the Starbucks or a Hulk. That's got the most green you can get. But for me, it has always been the Batman. Since now owning this for a couple weeks, I've grown to appreciate this in a slightly different way, and perhaps this is a little bit more me now. When I you know, wanted the Batman and, you know, have it and I love it, I wanted it to be bright. You know, I wanted it to stand out. It's kind of meant to be a little bit of a fun piece, you know, something a little bit more you know, flamboyant, but I mean, we're not talking gaudy or anything like that, but just something a little bit more out there, a little bit more noticeable. Look at me, I guess. You know, this is pretty early in my watch collecting history. And so it was a little bit earlier on. I wanted something a little bit more flashy, a little bit more noticeable, and something a little bit more unmistakably a Rolex. And I think that is definitely the Batgirl, because this colorway of black and blue is not often repeated. And when it is repeated, it is a clear ripoff of Rolex. So I think there is a couple of tags out there that have gone with this black and blue colorway, but not anyone else has really dared to do that. The downside is I think ladies are not as keen for this shade of blue. It doesn't match really anything that they like. So I know there's like some ladies out there, you know, which one to get. I think the shades on the Pepsi are more similar, like especially the red, more similar to a real lipstick color, as opposed to say like a, you know, a bright, super bold red or something like that. You know, this is a more common / more realistic lipstick color. So the sort of subtleness to both of these colors is something that the Batgirl doesn't have. And while this I wouldn't call quote unquote a true Pepsi, I don't think it, just immediately pops out as this blue and red, vibrant like the aluminum 5 series, in the past. And certainly could be done again in ceramic. I think like a matte ceramic on the Pelagos, blue and red would be incredible, or go the Batman colors, would be absolutely insane. What I am liking about this is, yeah, it's a little bit more subtle. And it's a little bit more mature, I would say, because of that subtleness. It's not as, it doesn't scream quite as much. Now I've got pretty bright lighting here, and the normal conditions also like pop into, basically black. It'll look mostly colorless in some situations. And it's just a lot more subtle. And in general, I kind of like that. Now I have pieces that are there for standing out a little bit more. I have my gold Daytona now. So I don't really need the GMT Master 2 to do all of that work, quote unquote. And yeah, so this is very beautiful. Yeah, between the Oyster version and the Jubilee, the end links and everything lines up exactly the same. For the most part, these are the exact same watches. Obviously, colorway. What that means is the colorway of the bezel is obviously different, and also actually the dial is different because the handset is different. So there's a blue 24-hour hand on this one and a red 24-hour hand on this one. And so that's kind of the extent of the changes. Now, there is one more thing, and it's actually pretty significant, that is different. And that is, if we look closely, the bezel insert is seated inside of the bezel. And you can see here where the bezel insert meets the bezel. There's a sort of a flat ring of steel around the Pepsi, right? So, that's normal, but how big is that flat ring? I think, just to my eye, that flat ring is a little bit bigger on the Pepsi than it is the Batgirl. I think it's more of an edge on the Batgirl, and it's a little bit more of a flat on the Pepsi. See at the bottom here, there's a pretty pronounced flat going around, while on the Batgirl, it never gets quite that thick. There is a ring, but it's about half the size, I think. I think it's pretty obvious to me that the bezel, for sure the internal mechanical dimensions, I'm sure exactly the same, as in I could pop the bezel off this and put it on here, and then you'd only have a mismatch on the 24-hour hand. But what you couldn't do is fit the Pepsi bezel into the bezel insert, the ceramic bezel insert, into the Batgirl's bezel itself. So that's an interesting minor difference. I mean, some say that this might be for bolstering the slightly more fragile Pepsi bezel insert, which many have claimed to be fragile. I have no idea if that's true. I think there may be some amount of truth in it. And then the other aspect is, like, maybe they know the Pepsi is always going to be slightly more coveted, and they want to prevent people from doing easy switches and swaps and stuff like that. So they make not just the insert different, but the actual bezel different as well. And say, hey, if you see a watch that doesn't have a pronounced rim, maybe that's a fake, because they didn't notice that small, tiny, almost completely insignificant fact. Although, as I said, even just looking at this, I can see the bezel is a little bit bigger. Okay, so that's it with the Pepsi unboxing. My collection is now complete, at least according to some of you. I could only hope so. And until next time, see you around.